Um, Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for today's webinar on the strategies, challenges, and for the electrification of the freight sector. We have a great panel planned for panel of speakers planned for you today. To begin with, we have a few housekeeping announcements. Please feel free to use the comment section on the YouTube page and the question bar, the chat bar in the Zoom link to please leave your questions and we will answer them during the panel discussion. Please make sure to mention your name and your organization's name when you're leaving any questions. I will quickly introduce our keynote speaker today, which is Mr. Rajendra Kataria. Mr. Kataria has played a key role in WRI's work over the last decade. We have worked with him for several years when he was municipal commissioner in Gurgaon. We are extremely thrilled to have him with us today. So you have been a very key part of our journey and have provided a significant amount of guidance and help over the years. Rajendra Kataria sir is an IS officer. He's currently serving as Secretary of Transport Department and Horticulture Department in Government of Karnataka. He has been Managing Director of Karnataka State Transport as well. And he has also served as Private Secretary in the Ministry of Railways, Labour and Employment Department, Government of India as well. Sir has played a very key role in setting up COVID care centers for patients during the COVID pandemic as well. So we welcome you today to our webinar, and
I think it is hanged.
So I think Kriti is facing some issues with the internet. So thank you, Rajendra Kataria sir. Thank you for attending this webinar. Then I would request you to provide some initial comments on accelerating electrification of urban freight in Bangalore and Karnataka. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, all the participants and panelists. Let me first thank the WRI-India team for organizing this webinar. And I'm sure such initiatives, such discussions are really required when we talk about the electrification in general and electrification of urban freight sector in particular, because this is an area where there's a huge scope and we have not really done much actually. Though different states have come out with the EV policy, both on the demand side and the supply side, but then still there is a wide gap between the level of expectation and the delivery mechanism or delivery system as of now. During the discussion, I think we are focusing on 4 issues, which I would like to highlight that for the Bangalore is lack of data on urban freight movement. So we need to how we can have the correct data, corrected, and then regulatory gaps. So there are, because this sector is totally new, so there are some gaps in regulation. So maybe we have to see how we can, improve that sector. Technological hurdles will also be there. So let us see how we can come out with. And the financing options are also there. Now, just for the sake of information of everybody, I had morning collected some data about the vehicular population in the city of Bangalore. Like we in the Karnataka state, we have around 2 crore plus vehicles in the entire state. And almost 50% of those vehicles are based in Bangalore, out of which I have collected the vehicle details actually. So it's almost 10 lakh vehicles we have in in Bangalore, urban vehicles, and then almost sizable number are basically vehicle used for the intra-city, small vehicles, intra-city freight movement. So they count almost, if I put together, almost 40,000, 3 to 4 lakh. So that 30% of the vehicle are now we are using. Though, so from supply side, the government has given various incentive and concession to attract the four-wheeler or three-wheeler for the goods carrier in the freight sector in Karnataka, in Bangalore also. But then there are challenges because one is the initial investment is pretty high compared to the other thing. Second, I feel that the charging infrastructure, though state is trying, but still there are gaps in charging infrastructure and time taken in charging infrastructure. So, so that is second issue. And third issue is, I think we have to expand in a big way. So maybe when there's a demand supply gap is there, so that we need to create demand so that there's adequate supply and we can bring down the prices so that it becomes attractive. So these are a few issues which I feel that we should focus on. And then right now we don't have any information on how many vehicles we have, electric vehicles we have, and are they really used for the freight purposes and all that. From the KSRTC and BMTC side, now we have started procuring certain vehicles. We have already taken 90 vehicles for the, I'm saying about the bus passenger vehicle, I am saying. And then we are also buying more. But now if you tour around Bangalore, especially if you go to the old city or even anywhere outskirts also, there's a huge movement of freight within the city because there are so many startups in Bangalore. IT hubs are there. There are a lot of people who are supplying door-to-door delivery and all that. So all this movement is happening through the traditional diesel vehicles. So and then it is added to the pollution. Sometime when you go to during the peak time in the city, you'll find a huge pollution everywhere. So I think over the last decade, the electrification has been a priority as a key strategy for to decarbonize the transport sector in India. And we also have focused that we should also work on this direction. Well, much efforts have been directed to the electrification of private and public passenger transport. I think the area which is missed out is basically the freight sector. I think freight sector, which contributes roughly 45% of the transport-related pollution in the country and in the city also. So I think this is an area we have, as we said, private vehicle, individual vehicles, like people are going for two-wheelers and cars, passenger vehicles, public transport, as I mentioned in the beginning, that we are also focusing, diverting our attention from the traditional vehicle to the electric vehicles. But the freight sector is something which is, there is a, scope, but I think we are not focusing on it. From the state government side also, we have already, as per the EV policy, supply side, we have improved a lot so that more manufacturer can come and establish their units. Demand side also, now we are thinking that how we can, create some kind of ecosystem in the state by offering certain packages so that people can come forward and buy. One, of course, we are thinking that scrapping facility, we are now saying this 15-year-old vehicle as per the government of India scrapping policy, that we can also think of, you provide, you scrap your old vehicle and we give some discount when you buy a new vehicle, especially the e-vehicle, so that we are, polluting vehicle, we are phasing out from the system, and we are promoting him to buy, instead of BS6 vehicle, we are promoting him to go and buy the electric vehicle, because long run, especially with this, the world situation now, the dollar, the diesel rates, petrol rates are touching sky high. So for long-term sustainability purpose, I think we need to also have electric supply and supply scenario in Karnataka, particularly in Bangalore, particularly. I would like to just say that we are in a very comfortable position. So that is an area, where we all of us should work. So maybe during this discussion, I would like that we should on four main challenges limiting the electrification of this sector, this freight sector in Bangalore. I already highlighted lack of data on urban freight movement. So how we can collect this data to improve the efficiency and to reduce the carbon footprint in the pollution in the system. Then regulatory gaps, though we have a policy, maybe their policy may have some practical difficulties or there's some gaps. So maybe during the course of discussion, let us identify those policy gaps, those issues, so that we can deliberate and come out with some new solution. And maybe out of this webinar, maybe we can give some recommendation to the state government, and then we can work on it, and we can see how we can internalize in our system and make necessary regulatory changes in our acts and rules and regulations. Then technology hurdles, of course, how we can have the technology hurdles removed. We identify the technology hurdles, especially the weight of battery. Everyone is talking about when you put extra battery, then the lead and weight will go up, and then the carrying capacity will also come down. Then long distance problem will be there. Then the topology, some places it may not work, and climate, temperature, road conditions. There are many issues actually, which I think a joint efforts, if we put in, maybe we'll be in a position to help us out. And then financing options are, maybe they are limited. Maybe we can think of how we can make it attractive. From the state side, we are also working on how to provide the incentive for the for creating demand for the electric freight vehicles and also the passenger vehicles. So how, apart from the government, how the private sector, the manufacturer of the e-vehicles, the banks can also do the financing part of it. So I think there are 4 or 5 issues that, which we have listed out today for the discussion. Maybe we can deliberate, and I would request Pawan or anybody from your team to work on it, and then give us the technical input, so that we work as a team, and we can out of this discussion we come out with some clear-cut recommendations, suggestions for us to take it forward, to make it happening on ground. There are sometimes many meetings we discuss, but then sometimes we don't convert those discussions into some action. So I believe that this 1 hour and 20-25 minutes when we sit there, let us discuss some key issues, and then give us real technical and solid solutions, suggestions, recommendations to the through this panel discussion to the committee, and then we at the government level we take a call on those suggestions. Some of them are, maybe I'm quite confident, will be very feasible within our existing ecosystem. We can add on, and some maybe require to bring some change in our existing system, which we are willing to. And some will be real challenge that we can further deliberate on how those difficult areas can be tackled to make to create that ecosystem favorable for the e-freight in Bangalore. I think with these notes, we open the this webinar, and then we continue as per the agenda. And then when we discuss about during the panel discussion, maybe we can focus more on individual issues. Thank you, Pawan, and everybody.
Thank you, sir. I think for those very encouraging words, and we have know that you're talking about getting into action, and what are the implementable solutions. And you have, I know last week you made the bus agenda move forward, and I'm sure now the freight agenda will also get the required attention for electrification. So sure, we commit to you that we will come up with actionable items and ensure that there is something concrete steps to address the gaps in the ecosystem to take this forward. I think also, you have known Madhav also, as part of the Embark, you have been part of our Baskaro events. Madhav is the executive director of WRI-India. And Madhav, if I can call you upon to share your thoughts and reflect upon what Mr. Kataria has been talking about. So over to you, Madhav. Thank you.
Thanks, Pawan, and welcome all of you. Thank you very much for joining us in this webinar. So I think, Pawan, I think very relevant points, and I think it's quite simple that in a way, I think the economics are there for freight vehicles. Also, they are the most polluting vehicles in the city. So I think electrifying them provides a huge opportunity. And I think it's best. I think I think it will be great to hear from some of the partners, and maybe I can speak at a later point. I don't really have anything significant to add. So I think let's just go and hear from some of the others, and then based on what we hear, I can probably add some remarks at the end. But just, yeah, thank you very much, all of you, for being here, and welcome to this conversation.
Rohan, back to you to continue the next steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kataria. Thank you, Madhav. So now we'll be having a brief presentation from Kriti, who will be giving us a bit of a background as to our research on the urban freight electrification. So it'll just be a 5-10 minutes presentation to give a background. So Please let me know when you can see my screen. Is it visible?
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Great. Kriti, would you want to take over?
Yes, thank you for that, Rohan. I'll just give a quick update presentation to set the context for the panel discussion that's coming up. Can we go to the next slide, Rohan, please? Yeah. So the freight and logistics sector plays a key role in the industrial development of the country. This is known to us. Today, it contributes to about 5% of India's GDP and employs over 2.2 crore people. India's logistics needs are met by about 1 crore vehicles. It is, however, important to note that majority of these are road transport vehicles, and road freight specifically contributes to 95% of the total freight sector related air pollution, air emissions. The next slide, please. So majority of the road freight vehicles are overaged and contribute significantly to air pollution from the sector. Today, the road freight sector accounts for about 42% of the total transport sector emissions. With the increased use of e-commerce and demand for overnight and same-day delivery, the road freight sector in the country has been projected to grow to 8 million vehicles by 2030, with a 451% increase in the emissions during the same period. There is thus a huge need to adopt strategies not only to improve the efficiency of the freight movement in the country, but also transition to cleaner fuels to minimize the emissions from the sector. The next slide, yeah. Today, the uptake of electric vehicles for freight movement in India has been extremely limited. Only approximately 4,000 electric freight vehicles ply on our roads, with majority of these plying in Tamil Nadu, Chhattisgarh, and Telangana. While we saw a huge dip in the number of electric freight vehicles that were being bought during the pandemic, this trend has recovered significantly in 2021 and is expected to grow. Next slide, please. While there has been a significant push in terms of the targets and incentives to electrify the passenger vehicles in the country through the FAME schemes, the freight sector has seen only limited support for electrification of the LCV segment only. There hasn't been much support from the government at this point in time in terms of incentives that are given for the adoption of electric freight vehicles. However, despite the limited government support, several large companies have pledged to transition their delivery and logistics vehicles to electric over the next 8 to 10 years. These include Amazon and Flipkart from the e-commerce space and Zomato and Swiggy from the hyperlocal delivery space, among many others in the country. In order to understand the demand for the electrification of the freight sector and better understand the challenges and potential way forward, WRI-India has initiated a study of the urban freight sector with a specific focus on Bangalore city. So in Bangalore city, being one of the largest industrial hubs of the south, it is a hotspot for logistics and freight activity. Majority of the in and outbound freight vehicles in the city, freight movement is done along 13 major corridors in the city. When we look at the trends in terms of population as well as commercial vehicle increase, the growth of commercial vehicles is matching the growth rate of the city's population approximately, standing at about 4.8% annual increase. While there has been a small dip during the pandemic, this trend is starting to increase again and is projected to continue at the same pace. Now, to gain greater insight into the types of movement between freight centers in the city and the location for charging infrastructure, we mapped a location of majority of the commercial establishments in the city and found that the 100-odd public charging infrastructure units that are set up in the city offer a direct accessibility 40% of the commercial establishments in the city. However, it is also important to say that these 100 charging units that have been set up is significantly lower in terms of capacity as well, to meet the demand for the number of vehicles that are currently plying in the city that are completing urban freight trips. This lack of accessibility to charging infrastructure is much more exacerbated when we look into the location of the APMCs, warehouse, and other industrial hubs, from where larger movements of goods and services is expected. While the transition. One of the main challenges limiting the uptake of the electric freight vehicles is the lack of multiple electric variants of freight vehicles, which also require high upfront cost. Today, there are very few variants in the market, two of which are presented on your screen right now. The Mahindra e-Supro offers a variant for the SCV segment that can carry approximately 600 kg payload and offers a range about 115 kilometers. And the Tata T7 for the LCV segment with a payload capacity of about 4 tons and a range of about 100 kilometers as mentioned by the manufacturers. However, this limitation in the number of variants that are available for electric freight movement has been found to be one of the key limiting factors. Moving on to the next factor, it is the lack of support in terms of regulatory support that is available for the of the freight sector. As mentioned earlier, the FAME schemes at this point in time seem to have greater support for passenger vehicles and very limited support for LCVs or freight vehicles. While several states do have some targets to transition to LCVs, transition their LCVs to electric within the decade, not many states have provisions in the form of any sort of demand incentives or non-fiscal incentives to support this transition. In addition to this, the current structure of the FAME scheme does not allow greater amount of incentives to be leveraged by consumers who wish to procure larger fleets, and it's limited to procurement of a single vehicle. In addition to this, the limited access to low-cost financing options has also been found to be a factor that limits the uptake of electric freight vehicles. While it is evident from the data that's presented on your screen, the passenger vehicles itself is significantly more expensive than the financing available for their ICE counterparts. However, the option for e-freight and fleet financing is extremely limited. From our conversation with e-player market, have stressed that they have customized deals which are extremely high in terms of interest with financing institutions, or have been forced to dip into investor capital for upgradation of their fleet and transition to electric. Finally, the lack of data for decision-making at the city and state levels has been found to pose a significant challenge for decision-making and infrastructure development. This slide shows an indicative list of the data points collected by both government as well as private sector entities. It is evident that there is some amount of data sharing that can be reinstated, and there is a huge opportunity not only to improve the efficiency of current freight movement, but also enable greater decision making for setting up of infrastructure and accelerating the adoption of freight vehicles as well. One of the options currently is the ULIP scheme that has been announced by the government, central government, in this year's budget, that offers a great opportunity to bring data from various players together and enable this improved efficiency of freight movement in the country. With this context, I would like to call on Pawan to initiate the panel discussion, and I will stop there.
Thank you, Kriti, for those insights. And without further delay, Let me introduce our panel. We have, of course, Mr. Kataria. I would request, sir, whenever you would like to really pose a question or you have some comments, please let us know, and we'll be happy to hear your thoughts. We are joined.
I'm not able to hear you.
Can you hear me now or no?
Yeah.
Is this better? Yeah. So we have Ms. Ayushi Jain, who is with Moving, Mr. Pratyush Tiwari, Head of Operations with EV Age, Mr. Pratik Pujari, Chief Operating Officer, Let's Transport, and Mr. Dheeraj Agarwal, Senior Vice President with Manapuram Finance. If I can request all the panelists to really turn on their videos, that would be really helpful. And I want to start off, Ayushi, with you, and then, of course, move on to other speakers. That, we've known that the freight segment is extremely fragmented in India. And my question is, like, as a sector, what can we really do to really bring together all the stakeholders together? I think that has always been a challenge. I'm sure your experience, you'll also talk about that. That's one part of the question. And I also feel that pointing to what Mr. Kataria was earlier saying, that there are gaps in data collection and detailed action plan. So are there any kinds of partnerships or solutions we think can help in delivering this, so that there is more information available in the ecosystem? So these are the two questions that I would really run across all the panelists. So first, Ayushi, please, over to you, and please share your thoughts.
Thank you so much for having me here. So great question. I think overall, as everyone's talking about, a sectoral sort of ecosystem approach has to be taken. At Moving, we are focusing a lot on the driver. On ground, as of today, the vehicle, it may be a two-wheeler, three-wheeler, a four-wheeler, or even a truck, is either owned by the driver themselves or by a small fleet operator. So how do we enable and empower him or her to actually make this transition to an electric vehicle, whichever form factor it is? And as Kriti talked about, and as well as Sir talked about before, there are multiple sort of issues that are around that need to be solved to actually make that transition to EV. So the way we are approaching it at Moving is, how do we actually not put all the load on a driver in the end of the day, or a small fleet operator, given that these vehicles are expensive right now, they will become less expensive in the coming years. But how do we bring that platform, an ecosystem together, where on the supply side, we work with great quality OEMs, make sure the product is properly tested out. We get financiers, insurance companies on board who understand the product well, who leverage the data Moving collects on a day-to-day basis to understand that this is the reality of the product, and this is what an electric vehicle is. How do we ensure that the driver has access to cheap and accessible charging infrastructure? So right now, most of the three-wheelers and two-wheelers on ground are on a slow charging protocol. So how do we ensure that access is there for a driver, and the driver understands how to operate these vehicles? So that's more on the supply side very quickly. On the demand side, once we are making sure that the driver or a small fleet aggregator is actually getting their vehicle financed, he or she actually needs to pay that EMI, right? So how do we have that demand in place? So having those contracts with large corporates, which Kriti talked about, who have committed to 100% electrification, and having that assured demand for the driver, so that in the end of the day, the driver is, in the end of the month, the driver is able to pay his or her EMI. They are able to drive an electric vehicle successfully and make that transition. Yes, four-wheelers and trucks they are still to come into the market, but I would say just give it another 10 to 12 months. We will have good quality products on market, and then at least for us, that is the strategic focus: three-wheelers, four-wheelers, and trucks, and you will see them on ground. Lastly, on data, it is being sort of collected by us in the end of the day. We have realized that one needs to understand the product. EV is a fundamentally different product from an ICE vehicle. So how do you actually understand an EV vehicle better? It is data and AI in the end of the day. How do you use that data to understand vehicle behavior, battery behavior, as well as driver behavior? And how do you use that data points to actually incentivize, for example, financiers, or incentivize OEMs or even other stakeholders in the ecosystem to believe in electrification overall? So I'll probably stop here and contribute later into the panel, but yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Aisha. I'm going to come back that you're collecting data, but do you have any open data policy to really share with government partners? But let me hear from Prateek. Prateek, if you can share your thoughts around these two questions. One is around this whole data collection efforts, and generally, even before we step into EVs, the trucking industry itself as a fragmented industry. How do we really bring various partners and stakeholders, individual drivers, small owners who own 5 trucks? There's extremely fragmented, and electrification of it at current level, we know that aggregators would be doing it. There have been many platforms in the past where they have been onboarding all this. But beyond that, is there anything else that we could really look at this sector?
Thanks a lot for that, Pawan sir. First of all, a very good afternoon to everyone. It's a great privilege to be a part of this discussion. First of all, I would completely echo what Ayushi just said. So first of all, coming to the sector as such, right? I think the urban logistics or urban freight sector is an extremely fragmented and a primitive market. Around 60 to 70% of the trucks which fly on the road are individual driver cum owners or very small fleet owners. There is a lack of technology penetration. There is absolutely a lack of data. So driving productivity, driving efficiencies is extremely difficult in the IC engine as such, space as such, right? From a supply perspective also, it's extremely difficult for drivers and partners to actually identify the right demand for them, to sort of connect with various SMEs, various enterprises, understand their perspectives, their way of working, their invoicing, their billing, and which leads to a lot of underutilization of the trucker capacity as well. And that is where we believe that an aggregation network actually adds a lot of value into this entire ecosystem, where you're democratizing the entire industry for the individual driver cum partner who can just plug into a platform and then pick and choose whatever trips that they want to do. And the entire billing, processing, collections, identification of demand is taken care by the platform itself. And from a demand perspective as well, aggregating all the enterprises on one particular platform and then doing a very optimal demand to supply matching is something that we believe adds a lot of value to the entire ecosystem in the traditional urban freight logistics itself. At Let's Transport, we basically do that. And over the last few quarters, we decided to sort of move towards electric vehicles. And we actually very quickly found out that we have to build an entire ecosystem if we want electric vehicles to actually get deployed in urban logistics. Each and every part of the ecosystem was extremely broken, extremely fragmented, and we realized that there has to be someone in between who can actually bring all the different pieces together, whether it is working with the OEMs in trying to understand what is the right vehicle manufacturing for what the right sort of demand, getting all the demand partners onboarded onto one particular platform, getting the best and the most optimal charging infrastructure in place. And I think very importantly, getting the right financing, where to get financing, how to get financing, what are the different avenues to get financing. And the fifth, and I think an equally important part, is getting drivers, getting trained drivers, getting them comfortable onto electric vehicles, and then building an entire ecosystem and giving that as a one-stop solution, not only to the individual driver partners, but also to the enterprises. So that's something that we have been doing over the last few quarters, I believe, to sort of give a lot of tailwind and sort of push electric vehicle adoption. I think it's something that is extremely important for the coming few years. Once this becomes a bit more democratized, sort of working very closely with the driver partners, once they get a feel of electric vehicles, once they start getting comfortable with it, once they start seeing the benefits of the same, then sort of pushing them or sort of encouraging them to sort of buy electric vehicles themselves, at the same time sort of working very closely with them in terms of getting them the best financing, the best avenues possible. At the same time, sort of giving them the visibility of demand as well. So getting that entire ecosystem in place, encouraging electric vehicles into the entire ecosystem, over a period of time, giving the individual driver come owners the comfort of electric vehicles, at the same time showing the enterprises the benefits of electric vehicles is something that we see as a journey. But if these discussions happen frequently and all of us come together, I think this entire process will get expedited, and we can actually see electrification of EVs, especially in the urban fleet sector, becoming that much more expedited going ahead. From a data perspective, it's extremely primitive, it's extremely fragmented. We struggle in terms of getting data of the IC engine itself, right? IC vehicles. But again, companies such as Moving, companies such as us, we basically try to sort of drive GPS, drive telematics, drive our applications as well to sort of collect as much data as possible. We try to share it with not only our driver partners in terms of what their performance and what their productivity is, we sort of share it with the enterprises as well, trying to understand where there are inefficiencies from their perspective. Where are they taking more time for loading, unloading, halting? How can they drive more productivity? So that's something that we at least do in a limited space that we are in terms of collecting data from applications, from GPSs, and trying to sort of mine that data in terms of driving productivity. But I think there will be a tremendous amount of push that will be required from government policies in terms of making GPSs mandatory, enforcing the same, so that all the data is coming on a particular platform that can be sort of, as you mentioned, right, open source, so that can be shared amongst different partners, amongst governments, so that everyone can be on the same page in terms of driving productivity and efficiency into the entire ecosystem.
Thank you, Pratik, for outlining the steps that you're talking about. So just curious, before I move to Pratyush, like how many drivers have you onboarded on your platform? Or
so right now, from a traditional business perspective, we have around 150,000 truckers who are on our platform, out of which around 15 to 20,000 truckers are active with us on a monthly basis. Electric vehicle perspective, we are deploying close to 150 electric vehicles as we speak, and we are going to sort of move that number close to 300 to 400 over the next 2 to 3 months.
Yeah. I see Kataria sir has turned his video on, so I wanted to check, sir, if you have any questions for Ayushi or Pratik.
I just basically wanted, Ayush and Pratik, you can also share what you expect as part of this business, that what changes you should that government should make, the system should bring out to convert this entire ecosystem into e-vehicle.
So, okay, I'm happy to take this. No, thank you so much for asking this, sir. First of all, overall, Karnataka government has been very supportive, and that's why it was one of our first cities in India that we started with last year. And we can proudly say it is one of our biggest cities as of today, where we have deployed the most number of 3-wheelers and 2-wheelers. Beyond that, I would say on ground, when it comes to basic things like financing, basic things like electricity connections for drivers, because many of them actually charge at their homes, that would be great. But I would say as of today, the government is doing a great job overall and has been supportive whenever we have approached even BESCOM or even other verticals of the government regarding any issues, even if they come up. There has been a fast turnaround, and organizations like WRI have been extremely supportive in making sure that the message gets to you. So as of today, I would say financing would be something that would be really helpful. And I don't mean just in terms of upfront subsidy, but also long-term. How do you make sure drivers do that transition?
Just adding on to what Ayushi just mentioned, Kataria, so a few points from my side. I think the subsidies that are there right now are extremely helpful because if you look at the total cost of ownership of an electric vehicle without subsidies, actually higher, because the cost of the asset itself is very high, right? So I think subsidies will need to be sort of maintained for quite a period of time till the scale sort of comes into play and the cost of ownership reduces. Even operating cost definitely is much lower, but the capex cost is much higher as of today, right? So the subsidies need to sort of go on for a decent period of time to sort of make EVs that much more attractive. Second is that we are seeing a lot of movement in battery swapping technology, and in the union budget as well, there's a battery swapping policy that has come out. What I think might be a bit more helpful in terms of, I don't know whether it is happening or not, but a bit more helpful in terms of expediting the entire process, is standard protocol for battery swapping. So typically what happens today is that the people who are making the entire network, right? They have their own ways, or they're making the individual networks, right? So if there is a common network, if there is a standard protocol, I think the adoption would be that much more quicker, especially from a battery swapping perspective. And again, there are a lot of technologies that are there. There's slow charging, as Ayushi mentioned, right? Majority of the vehicles that we are deploying are also slow charging. The second largest is, battery swapping. Now we have started seeing some fast charging vehicles coming into play, right? But from a charging infrastructure perspective, as Ayushi mentioned, right, giving incentive to build public charging infrastructures, right, giving those particular subsidies, having standardized protocols as well. I think there are 3 or 4 protocols that are running right now, right? Standard protocols so that, it's easily interchangeable, which will sort of build an entire ecosystem and sort of expedite the entire process. I think these are 3 or 4 points from my side where, regulatory help can really help in terms of pushing EV adoption.
Also, just to add one last thing, sir, I know Morth is pushing on an aggregator policy overall at a state level. So even having that implemented in Karnataka would be great. Like I know Delhi government, now Maharashtra is also pushing on it. But if we could leverage the Morth guidelines and then push it in Karnataka, that would sort of be a lever and a push for large companies to actually transition to EVs and take it more seriously.
I'll just bring Pratyush also, since we haven't had the opportunity to hear from Pratyush and Dheeraj. So Pratyush, you can respond to Sir's questions also, and then generally share what you have been doing with EVs.
Before
also.
You go, just one small thing. Like with all the participants, anybody can comment. There's an issue regarding the actual kilometers and the reported or the defined kilometers. Like when you buy any vehicle, generally they say the X kilometers a vehicle will run. Especially with the electric vehicle, this problem is that if it is saying 150 kilometer single charge, and then there's an opportunity charge of say 45 minutes or a proper 4 hours charge. Now the first charge, single charge kilometers is very, very important for any because it adds to its extra cost, time, money, energy, everything is part of it if the vehicle is not able to run. And you can't have a huge batteries also installed, because then those batteries will take away the space from your vehicle, and then whatever advantage you have versus the rest of the vehicles. So what is your experience about it, and which kind of vehicle you suggest that what should be the minimum kilometer of single charge for the freight size? Because we are also discussing these issues with the manufacturer also, because somehow that feedback has to go to them. And since you are operating through your network, so you would also be realizing that how many trips one would like to have, and whether it is really, because when I say we are running BMTC buses, so I know what they have declared, and I also know what difficulty we are facing. So there is a gap between what has been declared and what is on ground. So with that, if you can share some experience as to
I'll probably quickly
add. 1 second. To be fair to all the panelists, I'll come back to you. Yes. Let me start with Pratyush and Dheeraj, and then we'll come back to you. Pratyush, over to you. You're on mute, Pratyush.
All right, sir. So, one thing is very, very clear that at this particular point of time, the EV industry is in its nascent stage, and IC engines is, it's on the last leg. It's a change which is not really going to stop. It is already here. It's unfortunate. Whatever the problems that we are discussing are actually of the first generation EV vehicles that we have seen, wherein, the battery chemistries are so, unfortunately, the EVs have been sold as a cheaper product, whereas it is not a cheaper product. It's a more advanced product. Herein, the cost of the product goes up because you more or less include the cost of the fuel in it. The batteries up till now, at whatever we've been getting, is of a very poor quality, if I was to add, and that's where all these issues are coming up. The battery chemistries at this particular point of time are of a very primitive nature. If you are to see what is happening in the state-of-the-art car companies, car manufacturers, and the battery, battery technologies are really improving by leaps and bounds. It's always been there. It is just that the cost has always been the factor that has been driving. We've been trying to get a cheaper product in to do the heavy lifting, which is not really happening. Now, fortunately, even if you have to take the example of the 2 vehicles that you put, the battery capacities and the charging times, if you saw, one was for about 8 hours, the other was for 4 hours. What one has to understand is it is basically the chemistry of the battery which limits the charging capabilities of the vehicle as such. If you are to take the likes of Tesla and all, I mean, they can charge at 10C capacities. What we are seeing is the LFP NMC battery capacity chemistries are not really that robust. The thermal issues are the other aspects. So we're getting a cheaper product in and asking it to do the heavy lifting. When it fails, obviously the degradation happens and the performances go down and the economics, all jump, they go out of the window. The products from the Panasonic and the likes of Toshiba have always been there. The LTO battery is a wonderful battery, which is a 1,000,000-mile battery, but it costs a bomb. That's where, I would like to, add here that the vehicles are not really existing at this particular point of time. The policy that the government has, the roadmap it has for the 2030 is a fantastic roadmap. The state governments are all falling in, and we have 10 years ahead of us, and it's a brilliant place to be. It's a very interesting time to be in the EV industry. If one, I'll take the case of Karnataka itself. To begin with, for any sort of a industry, for the EV especially, what you require is sustainability, profitability. You require measurable parameters, and you want to be able to enforce things upon. That's how the entire logistics ecosystem or the freight logistics system across the urban areas. That's the only way you can survive. Thankfully for us, the environmental issues are global as well as local. We have precedences in the US and other places where people have come around. We can learn from their mistakes. Even if you are to look at what Delhi is doing, I feel Delhi is doing a wonderful job in the sense that they have controlled to a great extent the number of vehicles they adapt on their various parameters. They have come out with the EV cell, a lot of policies going in, a lot of incentives, and they're building a lot of things from the grounds up. They gathering a lot of data. They, like Aishi brought out and Prateek also brought out, that they are mapping. They're coming out with the aggregator policy, wherein all the people onto the platform that come, they're all registered. So data gathering takes place at a very good pace. Again, if you are to, the Delhi government is also coming up with the apps for the centralized apps, wherein they're pulling in the data from all the charging infrastructure people, giving out the locations of these particular place, transparency in the instance, like what will be the rates, what are the kind of charges that are existing in this particular thing. So things are in a way, improving. A lot of data gathering is happening, and I'm quite sanguine about it. Even if Delhi has a different problem to have, which I feel the states like Karnataka, especially Bangalore, if we have to take it on, can really benefit from it. Delhi had an interim, so because the pollution problem in Delhi was the largest, they had to intermediately get into the CNG mess. Now they are in between the two messes. They want to adapt EVs, whereas they can't really negate the CNG aspects also. Whereas that I feel is a huge advantage for Karnataka, especially. If you take Karnataka, the power, so it's a great success story in the sense, like from a power deficit company state, Karnataka has moved on to a power surplus state. And the best part of it is the 50% of the sources of generating electricity are renewable. It's sustainable, it's eco-friendly. And what I read last year is that the per unit cost of electricity had gone down to as low as ₹2.47. I mean, for anybody who's into the EV industry, this is fantastic. I mean, we at EVH are looking at that particular thing only. What we understand. So,
Pratyush, sorry to interject. I also wanted you to, specifically, let me bring back the topic to the freight specifically, because I think we are a little bit going into the general discussion. But can you talk about some of the products that you guys have and how you're trying to meet the needs of delivery? I think focusing around freight would be interesting, and then if you can, then I'll go around the other speakers. So
absolutely. Yeah. So what are they? So I take it the product is not there. at this particular point of time? What would be the correct product? So what we have generally, and Ayushi and Pratik, can correct me, what we have generally seen from our sources and the data that we've gathered over a period of time, a max range of about 100 kilometers within the city parameters, end to end is a very good range to have. All right, that's what EVAGE has gone into, and we've optimized on that particular range. The biggest problem that one faces, be it whatever set of vehicles, be it passenger, be it commercial, or any sense, even for freight matter, as a matter of fact, freight, because our vehicle is a 1-ton vehicle which we have designed specifically for the urban areas as such. Now, what we realized is the chemistry of the battery is very important. The downtime of the vehicle is where it pinches the most. Now, if how we have addressed that is, we have a 15 kilowatt battery pack. Now you can understand that's just 15 units of electricity. If you were to convert it into 2.5 or whatever you want to convert it into, that's the optimal running cost for 100 odd kilometers. The downtime of the vehicle that we have is it charges completely within 15 minutes. With a 50 kilowatt charger, a 15 kilowatt battery is good to go in 12 minutes. So I'm still taking more than that. So effectively, with a downtime of about just half an hour, you can run 200 kilometers. And when you can run 200 kilometers, the economies all fall in place. The operating cost is extremely low. The IC, compared to the IC engines, the EVs have less moving parts. Less friction is generated, less heat is there, and the operating cost keeps on reducing because you've paid for the battery upfront. That's where that's where the efficiencies and the operating cost goes down. So one has to be for the freight sector specifically. What one has to provision for is the ultra fast charges. For ultra-fast charges, you require charging networks, the electrical department to step up in this particular case. It's more of a real estate problem, in the sense like you require a transformer dedicated for this particular purpose because the amount of heat it will be generating and all those aspects. So that's where I feel the push should be specifically for the freight sector, ultra-fast charges. The batteries that are capable of taking a load of that the chemistry and the cost of the batteries, of course, will go up, and that's how the size of the batteries goes down. With efficient charging systems, downtime brought down to minimal with ultra fast charge networks. All the range and other issues are sorted out. The business actually is taken care of. So the driver has a good earning, everything goes good.
Got it. So you're talking about ultra fast, better batteries, but I think that's kind of common across all sectors. And I'll come back to you. But the question I have for you, Pratyush, in the next round would be that is India ready technologically? Because you said we are not getting proper batteries, we are getting low quality, we need higher charges. But we are talking about how do we really move the ecosystem? How do we move the needle? So from that perspective, that's the question I have for you. And I'm sure Mr. Kataria also will have that question, that how do we really ensure, what can we do in the next 2 to 3 years? I think that's the big question we're trying to ask. I would bring in Mr. Dheeraj, like given your financing expertise, like how do you see, I know we have heard barriers from 3 aggregators or operators. What do you think are these the genuine barriers? And what role an NBFC like Manapur can play in financing the e-freights? I think that's the big question we have for you.
Yeah. Hi. Thanks, WRI, and thanks, Pawan. And good afternoon to everybody. Mr. Kataria's question was there for why, what is the kilometer range and all. So I want to answer that, sir. The issue which we are also facing is, it's correct. Whenever the vehicle is being given to a driver, he feels that when the OEM said that this vehicle can travel up to 150 kilometers, or 100 kilometers. The reason why it is not happening is because the drivers are overloading it. That's Indian mentality. Whenever you are taking a 3-wheelers or a 4-wheelers, they overload it, and if they are driving the vehicle with a race, so definitely the range will definitely go down. Yeah, so that is also a major factor. So there should be a proper training given at that time when we are selling the vehicles. Same way, I think Moving is doing it. We are partner with Moving in some of the area for financing this product. And above all, the industry, what we as an NBFC, like I think everybody has covered, the finance is a problem with this product. So the reason why we as an NBFC are reluctant of financing this product is on the quality. If the quality is good, I'm not naming any brand, but there are brands which are really very good. Yeah, but there are also other brands which are not good. So there is no Tesla in India as of now. So if that type of product can be come to India, NBFCs will definitely are ready to finance this product. And above all, the repayment capacity also, we don't know. Nobody has seen that, like batteries, like the issue here is batteries are being manufactured at some other brand, and OEMs are developing it and they are taking it. So that is the reason also, I think, sir, it also happens that batteries are, there are a lot of activity seen where we saw some of the batteries are being burnt up. So that activity also, that is very serious matter. And coming of this lead acid, I don't think there is any problem, but lithium batteries is hazardous. Like it is definitely going to create an issue if it is get burnt up. So that is to be taken care of. And from the government point of view, I think I am just now coming out of a Delhi government meeting where Delhi government is also planning in a very big way and on how to go ahead with it. They are giving subsidies. One thing which we have requested the Delhi government, the subsidy part is to be given to the NBFC. Yeah, the reason being, if we give the subsidy to a customer and that customer is not paying me, I lose. So in that case, if we can definitely pass on this benefit to the customer, so that 30,000 rupees of subsidy which is being given to a customer on a vehicle of 4 lakh rupees, 30,000 rupees is there by the FAME. Apart from FAME, there is a subsidy that should be given to the NBFC, and I will give it to the loan. So the loan amount will goes down, customer will pay the EMI on time and less EMI. So that way, that will definitely help me in growing it. This is some of my points. Rest I am there to answer questions.
Sir, I'll ask you if you want to have any specific questions, Kataria sir, additionally. I know Ayushi also wanted to respond earlier. So if you have any specific questions, we can discuss for the next 10-15 minutes.
One issue, maybe somebody who is expert in this field may answer. The e-vehicle, there's a revolution in worldwide. What kind of vehicle we were getting 5 years back and what we are getting now? How do you foresee the scenario next few years? Because that would decide. Like I remember when I was MD KSRTC, so we were thinking of solar installation at our premises. So somebody advised me that it is going to change. So maybe you are getting some 5 rupees 70 paisa. It will come down to 3 rupees. I thought maybe he was simply making a statement, but it happened. It is now we are paying at that rate. So I'm just asking, anybody can comment, how do you see this scenario in years to come?
I'll take that one. Sir, it's a very, technologically, the world is really moving very fast. I'll take the example of a mobile phone for everybody's, reference. Not very long time back, we used to have the charging, which was of a very slow nature as such. Right. I mean, we all used to be carrying our power banks around and, they used to heat up, they used to run out. So processors couldn't, the technological advancements, the cameras were taking a lot of power, the chipsets were, the apps were heavy. So the motherboards and everything that was in it was power hungry. So the heart of everything in the phone industry was the battery. With the lithium-ion batteries coming, the technological advancement taking place, today we have normal, 25,000 rupee phone also coming with a 120 watt charger. So, it charges flat in 30 minutes time. And that's the kind of revolution we also see happening in the EV industry. So the world is already there. They've recognized, in fact, a lot of chemistries started off together. but some of them have fallen back because it's only the leaders that have got on. So if you even look at the success story of how the Rivians of the world, how the Arrivals of the world, and how the Teslas of the world have survived, it's basically because of their battery technology. And they've invested considerable amount of money in the batteries. And with the batteries, the performances are guaranteed, the efficiencies come, and the longevity of that. That's what the future is, and we will see. I mean, the threshold will keep on getting pushed up. Even if you take in the local passenger segment, the a little while back only Tata Nexon came out with its normal battery, and now they're enhancing that particular battery pack to a bigger battery pack. The initial the lot of vehicles that came to India, the first generation vehicles, they were all, Mahindra Veritos came out with 11 kilowatt battery packs. Today, Tata Nexon is already thinking of launching a 45 kilowatt battery pack. The chargers that were onboarded onto these particular vehicles were initially 3.3 kilowatt battery chargers, and now they moved on to 7.2. So that brings down the charging time to half, and that's exactly. So one has understood that this particular way is the only way to survive, and that's how we are also looking at bringing in a battery pack which is and everybody's burned their fingers. I was with I've worked with the aggregators for the past 3 years, so I'm absolutely aware of what are the heartburns, what are the performance issues, and those things that come across. So there is no shortcut to it. There is no cheaper answer to it. So one has to get the state-of-the-art batteries. And that's where, and like you mentioned, like ICAT carries out certifications for these ranges and all. They should, and like I said, we have to enforce things. There have to be punitive measures taken in case the performances are not up to the mark. People should be, the industry can't be made to suffer for that. So we should get these things tested, enforced, and regulated at a particular level. And that's how the confidence in the industry would build, and that's how the better players. See, at the end of it, it's all economics. If I get a cheaper product and run it for a few years, I have brought down the cost and the standards across the industry, so to say. If I get a expensive product and run it today, I can't compete with people who are buying a cheaper product. So that's where it's over a period of time, one has to take these things into consideration, and regulations have to enforce these things.
Thank you, Prateek. Anyone else? Yeah. Yes, please. Ayushi, yes.
Here. And just to add some color to it, sir, is overall the transition is going to happen to sustainable transport. The larger sort of mission here is how do we reduce pollution, right? It may be on public transport, personal transport, and the overall ecosystem as a nation. So the way we envision it, and even I personally, is that it will be sort of a phased-wise approach. Currently, as of today, for the e-commerce last mile segment, basically, it makes economic sense, and that's why that transition is happening. To an extent, for buses as well. So buses and last mile logistics will transition fully to electric in the next 3 to 5 years maximum, because it just makes sense. All of us know today the barrel prices have gone up and they're only going to rise. So that's going to come in first. Then the next phase will probably be your personal vehicles. I am a personal owner of a Tata Nexon, have driven about 31,000 kilometers as of today on my Tata Nexon in just 12 and a half months. And it's more of a psychological sort of thing that we have, that EVs are not possible. But over time, in the next 1.5 years, at a personal city level, personal cars will also start making that transition. So in about 10 years, that personal vehicle transition will also happen. And as Pratyush was talking about, when it comes to trucks and others, as battery chemistry evolves and there are better batteries, better battery management systems, even trucks will evolve to electric, or even hydrogen is another option. And of course, we won't discuss that. That's another large topic. But the larger goal will be reducing pollution and enabling governments and working with governments to achieve those goals.
Prateek here. Is just a couple more points from my side. I think one of the challenges that we're facing, and I think both Pratyush and Dheeraj has touched upon it, right? There is no clear product leader out there, right? That, this is a product that, you can sort of vouch for and sort of, double down on. So I think over the next couple of quarters or next year, at least what we feel is that there'll be very good products that will go out there, good quality products that will go out there, where you can sort of double down on. People will be more comfortable on. A few sort of, larger OEMs also coming in with great reasonably priced products. So that is something that is going to come in. That's according to us, right? Given the excitement in the space, that will help sort of propel the adoption towards EVs that much more. Second thing that we always face with clients is the fact that the loadability and the capacities of the trucks that are available right now, which are mostly three-wheelers, especially in urban freight, right? Three-wheelers, and we are just seeing the first set of 1-ton four-wheelers coming in. But if you typically look at the benefits, right, it is for the higher capacity vehicles where you can see a significantly more benefit from both from a cost perspective as well as from a sustainability perspective. So as and when you start, seeing the battery technology evolve, when you start seeing slightly higher capacity vehicles coming in, and I'm very sure this will come in over the next few quarters, I think the adoption would be that much more faster, at least from a demand perspective. And that's where then we might need to sort of work in terms of the financing part of it. And because there are better quality products that are coming in, financing should become that much more easier. And I think that will start the entire virtuous flywheel going ahead.
Anyone else wants to come in? Rohan or Kriti, if you had any thoughts. I think there's also a question to Dheeraj in the chat. What is
one issue I would like to highlight is that we have been discussing about the vehicle and battery. This charging infrastructure, the participation by the private players is also very, very important. Government is providing, I have issued instruction to all my KSRTs and BMTC depots, wherever we have placed that, you can, it's like a fuel station for future. Like you can create infrastructure. Maybe initially you can use it for your own buses or own vehicles. Then you can give a two-wheeler, three-wheeler, four-wheeler. Like people will get the comfort when you have an adequate charging station spread across the city. So that this opportunity charging for half an hour, 30 minutes, you can charge and you can apply for next few, say 25 kilometers, so that you get that comfort zone that you can be back at your place and then you can, continue your journey seamlessly. No, I think one area is that we should also focus that how to involve the private players into the charging infrastructure.
Right. So I have established about 24 stations in Delhi NCR. And the problem we saw was that if you look at the capacity utilization factor of these chargers, it's less than 10%. And like I said, in the urban areas, the real estate is the real problem. It's capital intensive. Getting the electricity connections and getting the transformers and all these things are a Herculean process. And post that, if you really look at it, 97% of the vehicles that are currently running in the country, that is in the EV segment, are all two-wheelers, only three-wheelers. All of them, they charge. 99% of them maybe charge at home, and maybe in between e-rickshaw driver or a e-auto driver may go for a intermittent charge, wherein, because the running of these people is also not more than 100 odd kilometers in a day. So one intermittent charge is good enough for majority of the people which are in the commercial space, they are running e-rickshaws and e-autos for public commute as such. Remainder, anyone who owns a private vehicle, all of them are charging at home, and they don't really require to charge it anywhere outside within the urban confines.
Tiwari, what I was focusing is actually that we are talking about the public transport vehicle only, the goods carrier vehicle only. Now, these guys, they come in the early morning, their timings are very odd actually.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you supply early morning or late evening, if you are into the vegetable, like sometime like people like us who are in service, or like you are, if you're not working from home, if you have to go to some physical location, then window to order your grocery or your requirement is either in the morning or in the evening. So the guys are actually all these goods carrier vehicles. I'm focusing on the four-wheelers, because they have to supply early morning to the godown and from there. So that is an issue sometimes. So they may not be adequately charged because the poor guy will be staying some remote location. He may not have that adequate charging facility. The quality of power will also be another issue. So some of these locations, I know that it is not a profitable business for the time being. I also know I'm also spending my money. I mean, my corporation, we are spending money, but I know that it is not going to make me add to my any income. But yes, maybe after 5 years down the line, I see that the occupancy or utilization from what you are saying 10%, it may go up to 70-80%. And then maybe at some point of time when there's a huge demand in the market, maybe that quick charge, basically the opportunity charge, if the period is reduced, nobody will park the vehicle for 4 hours. People would like 10 minutes karna hai, but 10 minutes is good enough for me to get my vehicle, enough charge so that I can go and come back whichever place I want to go. So I'm sure the technology will come in next few years' time, because now we had recently I discussed this issue when the government of India is floating the world largest tender actually for procurement of e-buses. Around 5,000 and odd buses are being procured for different states, for different cities. So there one issue came up about a single charge, kilometer. What is the range of single charge? So then there are many factors, because single charge range, they can internationally, there are 200 plus also, but then you are reducing the space in the bus.
Absolutely.
You are a goods carrier, you're reducing space in the bus. So
absolutely
require these charging stations. Government is providing, but then again, like we have fuel station, private players are in place. They see, of course, they see business in it. I'm sure the business will come, not now, but maybe after 5 years, when business will come, it will be difficult to get the permission. So now this is the time when you invest for 5 years and then you have the, a side business also. So what is your take on this?
Sir,
100, yes.
You want to go ahead, Aishi? Thanks. So, sir, the easier answer to that particular question is, we talk in terms of the last mile, middle mile, and the milk runs, so to say. So, long hauls, or whatever we refer to. So, if we take the vehicle, which is a 3-wheeler, which is specifically used for the last mile, we know it runs locally within a radius of about 25 to 30 odd kilometers from its hub or the charging station from where it starts, which is normally in the confines of the city as such. So his comfort zone is there and his ranges are there, and all those aspects are generally where these charging stations are, and they are more or less kind of taken care of. But like I would like to take your mind to what Map Priti put in the beginning itself, wherein she brought in the freight centers in and around Bangalore. There, that particular place, you see, they're all on the periphery of it. That's largely the middle mile, which is not being catered for any of the vehicles at this particular point of time, because typically the fleet owners at this particular point of time using the IC engines, which are larger in capacity, to push these vehicles into the center of the cities. They drop off products onto the bulk breaking points or the delivery points from where they're taken on by the smaller smaller capacity EVs, be it all the 3-wheelers, so to say. Because of that, what is happening is that the electrification of the peripheral areas is not taking place. That's how that also needs to change. That I'm sure with the advent of the vehicles coming in, the larger vehicles coming in, the middle mile and the long haul will also move towards electrification.
And just to add to that, so one thing we are saying is leveraging data. Again, talking about data and leveraging sort of geo-enhancing of understanding that as WRI put out that map, right, there are certain industrial areas where concentration of these truckers, of these warehouses are there. So, for example, taking a very specific example of how moving is going after this is that we have over 20 plus large clients nationally. And we ensure that when we are entering any new city, it may be Bangalore, it may be Chandigarh, even a tier 2 city like Ludhiana, we map out our clients to ensure that we take a charging hub that is close to all of them. And we can ensure that truckers, you may say 4-wheelers, 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers, can at any point come in and charge. And as you said rightly, sir, as of today, what is happening on ground is 2-wheelers generally take back their vehicles at home and charge it at home very easily. But when it comes to 3-wheelers and soon 4-wheelers, most of the people, drivers where they live, they probably generally can't actually take those vehicles back because they don't have enough space to take such a vehicle back. So there has to be a larger sort of space, as we call it, are charging spaces in place where a driver can park their vehicle overnight, charge these vehicles, come at 3 a.m. in the morning, do that milk run, probably top up a little, and then do that one more shift, so doing 1.5 shifts, earn enough for the day, and then go back. But those spaces will need to be created, and those spaces will need to be created leveraging data and leveraging mapping to ensure that they are easy to access.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Otherwise, Kriti, you want to facilitate? Yeah.
Yes. So one of our panelists, Mr. Dr. Amita Varan, was unable to attend the session because of an urgent meeting that he had. However, he has sent over some comments over video. So we'd like to just play that for the panel and the audience to just get his viewpoints as well. So could we please have his video on?
And while you're, yeah, okay. The volume is not audible, Kriti.
Yeah, just a second.
We still can't hear.
Anandita, can you please check the audio as well? The audio is on full volume, so I don't see anything else which I can do. So I'll play it and hoping that everybody can hear.
Against diesel with respect to cost of operation is going to be tremendously different, and it is a huge advantage. Whether you're talking about three-wheelers, whether you're talking about small commercial four-wheelers, whether you're talking about larger vehicles, including, for that matter, buses. I think it's becoming very clear that if you look at the total cost of ownership, which means the down payment that you've given, the EMI that you have to pay on a monthly basis, and the amount of money you spend in refueling your vehicle. When you compare diesel against electric, you stand to gain tremendously. And hence, that's the reason why you're seeing so much push in the e-freight sector. This is just a start. You'll see more and more formats of different kinds of vehicles that will start showing up, catering to different kinds of use cases. So that one size fits all, you've created a tonnage vehicle is not going to be there anymore. It's going to be replaced by different kinds of vehicles for different use cases, possibly a lot dealing with volumetric use cases rather than tonnage based. That's our feeling, and we're fairly certain that we're going to be catering to this segment more and more going forward. Altigreen has always maintained that, given the simplicity of an electric vehicle, it's very clear that you will find more and more formats of vehicles that will be present, whether it's in two-wheelers or three-wheelers or in four-wheelers or in fact in more wheels. It's very clear. As far as four-wheelers are concerned, since the question is around four-wheelers, it's very clear. Four-wheelers are robust vehicles that can cater to long distance travel. It can cater to a different kind of load segment. It can carry a different kind of volumetric load given the stability of the vehicle. We are certain that four-wheelers in the e-freight segment are going to play a very critical role. Last mile mobility, whether it is in the form of small commercial vehicles or mid-size, LCVs, you will find more and more of them getting into the marketplace. They are needed, as first mile, mid mile, last mile, you name it, there will be need for it in different kind of segments. And you will see more and more companies start showing up in this segment as we become more familiar with battery packs, as we become more familiar with fast charging, as we become more familiar with different kinds of materials to build our motors and controllers and those kinds of things. So more and more you'll start seeing it. Again, the economics works hugely in favor of e-vehicles for commercial cargo operation. And I'm sure this is going to be the case going forward.
So with that, I think if there are no more questions, we can maybe look to hear a summary from one of my colleagues, Rohan. So Rohan, I hand it over to you now.
Yeah, thank you, Kriti. Thank you, everyone. I mean, there were some great points made by the speakers, and they pretty much covered, the whole gamut of current status of freight electrification. So just to summarize and also add a few points for way forward. So the four main points that we spoke about, data, the regulation, and challenges. So from a developing a data framework point of view, right? So we feel that, the government's program of developing this unified logistic interface portal, and also this, the Government of India's Smart Freight Cities initiative could pave a way for greater integration of multiple freight specific data, right? So the ULIP could bring about from different states, and also the Smart Freight City initiative specific to cities could help in greater integration specific to some sort of data points with regard to origin destination of these kind of freights, the type of commodity it carries, and also the payload capacity and so forth. So that could be a huge game changer going forward. From a technological standpoint, of course, we had very good introspection as to where we are and where we could be in the next 5 years. But we also, one of the biggest hurdles for electrification has been the diminished load carrying capacity of the electric variants themselves. Again, the government has taken cognizance of it, and the new initiative with the Honorable Finance Minister came up, and like the battery swapping policy that Niti Aayog also wants to institute in the next few months. Could have tremendous impact on this freight sector, and also new business models in the market, like the battery as a service, where battery services could be bought on a subscription basis, will provide some sort of flexibility to fleet operators when you're talking about first mile, last middle, and last mile connectivity, and also help decouple the higher initial cost of the EV. So we also spoke about how they are first-time users, where the owner themselves is the driver, so forth. So the initial cost has been a barrier. So decoupling of this could also help in higher adoption of EVs. And also from a fiscal point of view, right? Few OEMs, probably from the two-wheelers perspective, they have been coming up with also significant financial support models and also buyback assurances, right? So few companies are also getting ready to buy back at 70 to 80% of the initial cost, even after 3 years. So this sort of, provides an innate confidence in the consumer as to the product itself. So going forward, even in the freight sector, could there be something we could explore, right? So the manufacturers could could have incorporate these kind of buyback assurances, which will build consumer confidence, and also, as Mr. Agarwal is talking about, also builds confidence in banks and NBFCs and finance institutions in the technology itself. So I think these are some points that we can take away. Thank you very much to all the guests and speakers. It was great, and I think going forward we will see a greater integration of or acceleration of electrification in the freight sector. So thank you. I give it back to you, Kriti. Thank you very much.
Kataria sir, if you're with us still, would say if you had some last few words for this webinar before we can end it. Yeah.
Thank you, Pawan, and your entire team for organizing this webinar. I'm now the entire ecosystem is we talk about e-vehicles, thinking about how to expand this area, how to have now the percentage is very few, negligible, and the growth is very good. So we have to also see what are the challenges in this growth, what are the issues which are hindering this growth. Some of those issues we have discussed today. Some of the feedback from the people who are actually operating these electric freight carriers, so that those issues have come. There are some few policy issues which, of course, government is handling from the supply side. There's some issues regarding the battery, specification of the battery, and then standardizing the whole the battery system, and also the charging infrastructure we discussed today. I'm sure some of these feedback will go in a long way in framing the way forward policy for the state of Karnataka, and some of them will also go to Government of India, where the central government has to come out with their policy in bringing revolution, I would say, in the field of EV, because this is an area which has a huge scope. I personally feel with the diesel petrol prices touching sky high, the operational cost is going so high, and now since we have become self-sufficient in the electric supply, like in Karnataka, we claim that we are surplus. In at season, we actually we stop our plants because there is no market. Solar energy and other energy are also adding to the pool, so that way we are surplus state. And sometime during the surplus availability of power, the power is supplied at a rate of 1 rupee and 1.5 rupee a unit in Karnataka. I'm saying about Bangalore city actually. During the discussion, we realized that there's some during late night. So we get 1 rupee, 1.5 rupee per unit. So I'm saying is we have to look for the opportunities, how we can make this whole EV system more attractive, how we can have more and more vehicles on the road, so that one, we can take the advantage of the operational cost. Second is how we can reduce the pollution in the cities. Our cities are very polluted. Most of the cities in India are very polluted, and one of the major contributor of the pollution is the vehicular movement. Vehicular population is growing day on day basis. So when we are growing the vehicular population, both sound as well as smoke pollution is on rise. So electric vehicle is the only option I feel personally, which is going to serve this purpose, going to bring reforms and revolution in the system. Through this webinar, I'm very confident that some of the learnings, both for the private sector and for the government sector, will help in giving direction for future. And I request the WRI team to organize such a conference more often and issue specific, so that some of the issues where the government also expect some experts to share their views, the ground realities, in giving shape and direction to our policies, so that we can have the expert advice before we take any decision in policy front. With these words, I thank everybody here for spending their valuable time for this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Finally, I'd like to time with us and sharing your thoughts, all keen insights with everybody who has attended the webinar and will be made public. All the key insights from today's discussion will also be summarized and shared with everybody as well. So with those words, thank you so much for participating.
And Kirti, thank to you also for running this workshop. I missed out your name. Thank you, Kirti.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.